As a content creator, the thing I struggle with the most is time management. I realized this particularly in 2024 when I set concrete goals for myself as a content creator. For example, I want to publish 2 blog posts per week. I want to focus on YouTube. I want to publish 5 YouTube shorts every week. I want to publish 1 podcast episode per week. I set these ambitious goals, but I didn't have a plan. And that's where I realized I was in trouble as a content creator. You see, I'm a family man with a full-time job. So I need a plan. I need structure to hit these ambitious goals that I've set. I need daily habits, and I need tools to help me organize my process. This is all very new to me, and I'm having a hard time adjusting to structure, where I sit down each morning to research, write, record, and edit videos and podcast. How do I arrange my week? Should I be all doing this on one day? Should I spread it out over a number of days? I am searching for some structure to make my life easier and more consistent as a content creator. And that's what I want to talk to you about in this episode. So I've gone from a content creator who approaches things as I like, publish when I like, to one who's seeking structure and trying to build a business. And maybe you are a content creator who is trying to build a business. Maybe you're fortunate to have considered structure from the very beginning and you use it to your advantage. I haven't. And I feel that now, as I'm introducing structure to the process, I'm having a really hard time adjusting. You know those headaches you get when you give up sugar and flour? You've probably been doing it for about 3 days and you get these terrible headaches. I actually feel like I'm having a hard time and getting headaches that I could directly attribute to a shift in the way that I approach life as a content creator. The good news is, though, that I'm getting things done. So I want to share the things that I'm doing in the background to bring structure to my life as a content creator. And I hope they help you. The first is that I've set goals. These are clear, concrete goals. 2 blog posts per week, 1 on a Monday at 8 a.m. and 1 on a Thursday at 8 a.m. I'll publish these blog posts on my website, potbake.com. These are clear goals. I have 1 podcast episode that I'll record and publish per week. Sorry, let me say that again. I want to publish 1 podcast episode per week at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday on the Caribbean Content Creators Podcast. And I want to publish 1 long form video on YouTube. Did I mention 5 YouTube shorts? 1 daily on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And these are concrete goals. I will know when I miss them. I will know if I'm hitting the targets. I'll get to the task management in a little bit, because while it is fine to have goals and set them, I quickly recognized that I needed some structure that I could approach these tasks and get them done. That is point number 3, which I'll get to in a little bit. The second item, in terms of how I'm structuring my time, is prioritizing writing. As a YouTuber, I'm tempted to think in terms of video first. So I may go out there and do it in some ad hoc manner, edit it, publish it. But I've stepped back and I no longer want to think in terms of video first. In 2024, writing is the priority. I'll tell you why. These articles will not only serve as the blog post for my website, but they will become the stepping stone to the YouTube shorts, podcast episodes, and long form videos. And I find, for me personally, as I write, new ideas spring up and I jot them down for later use. Versus if I was creating a video and I'm focused on creating that video, because the focus is on the video, my mind is a little bit closed to other ideas that might present themselves. So I'm prioritizing writing. To use this podcast episode as an example, I wrote this article, I have my talking points, these talking points are forming the structure for this podcast episode. On the day where I'm recording my videos, my YouTube shorts, I could extract these points and quickly get a YouTube shorts episode out of it. In fact, if I wanted, I could even get a long form video out of this on the day that I'm recording these long form videos. So I'm already dropping clues here that there's some structure in terms of daily writing. I've set aside particular days for research, for recording videos, for recording podcasts. For example, it is 11:21 a.m. on the 8th of January. Currently, my plan is to record about 2 other podcast episodes, hopefully 3. So I'm using a strategy called time boxing, which I'll get to in a bit. The use of task management tools. Now, this is a work in progress. So I'll tell you the tools that I have used over the years and what I have added to the mix in 2024 to structure my life and to use my life a little bit more wisely as a content creator. So for the last 3 or 4 years, I have used Google Keep to write articles and jot down ideas. If you're familiar, Google Keep is a note-taking service. I like it because I'm not restricted to writing on a local desktop file. There's an app for your phone, for Android, for the iOS, where I can access Keep from my phone or my desktop. And in 2024, as I turned my attention to having a content plan, I realized that I had to arrange, prioritize, and track the different tasks that I need to do. For example, research, record videos, record podcast, and I immediately began feeling the limitations of Google Keep. It's fine as a note-taking service, but I've heard about productivity software and a note-taking service called Notion. So I want to look into it to see what it brings to the table. In the meantime, though, to track tasks and the status of these tasks, meaning is an article written, has the podcast episode been recorded for it as yet, has the video for the corresponding article been recorded as yet, to track these tasks, I'm using Google Sheets. I created 2 spreadsheets. I'm going to share the content of these spreadsheets with you with the hope that if you want to arrange your life and your time a little better as a content creator, that it helps you in some way. So one of these spreadsheets is a publishing schedule for articles and podcasts. The other is a publishing schedule for videos. So I have 2 separate spreadsheets. I could open it at any time and I could get a holistic view. Let's talk about the first spreadsheet, which is where I have the publishing schedule for my articles and podcast. Let's look at the fields that are in this spreadsheet. There are 7 fields in all. Let me list them out for you. There's the article name, status, published by, published on, the podcast status, the podcast recorded on, podcast edited on, and podcast published on. These are date fields. So there's the article name and the article status. So for example, I have the article name for how I manage my time as a content creator. And the status is that it has already been written. It's not published, so there's no publish by date. When I eventually publish, I will open the spreadsheet and I will include the published on date. Right now, the podcast status is set to recording. And when I've actually recorded it, I will go to the podcast recorded on field and update it. When I've edited the podcast, I'll go to the podcast edited on, which is a date field. I'll fill it out. And then eventually when I publish the podcast, I will include the date. This simple change has done a lot for me. Based on how I have done things prior to 2024, it is a little bit boring, but I now have one place where I could go and get a holistic view of my content plan. And color coding the rows helps as well. For example, a row highlighted in yellow means that I've written the article, but the corresponding podcast hasn't been recorded. If I highlighted green, I know that the article and the podcast episode, they are published. Let's jump to the next point. The next point has to do with a concept called time boxing. I learned about time boxing during my undergraduate studies. It's a concept that sounds great, but I hate time boxing. We'll get to what it is shortly. Because when I'm working on something, all I want to do is work on that thing until it's done. So for example, if I'm editing a podcast, if I want to record a podcast, what I would do is I would do all the research for it. I will write the episode, I will record the podcast, I will edit the podcast, and then I will immediately publish the podcast. That is how I have always done things. I get a task. So for example, if I was doing a video, I'll get the idea, I'll script it. If any scripting is necessary, I'll record it, I'll edit it. But in the meantime, what I recognize is that other tasks are slipping. If I dedicate 3 days to recording, planning, recording, and editing a video, there are other items that are slipping. For example, the articles on the website, the corresponding podcast episodes are outstanding. So let's talk a little bit about what time boxing is. Time boxing is a strategy which involves setting a maximum amount of time for an activity in advance and then completing the activity within the time frame. For example, I have dedicated an hour to recording podcast episodes. So it allows me to say I have 1 hour to record as many podcast episodes as I can. When that time frame ends, I move on to other tasks. So in this hour, I hope that I would be able to batch record at least 3 or 4 episodes if possible. And you know what? Maybe tomorrow morning, I have a time box set aside for editing podcast. So I'm in continuous cycles of research, write, record, edit. When the time is up, I stop the activity. I go to the gym. I have a time box for that. I'm dedicated to it. So as much as I hate time boxing, I now use it to batch research, write, edit, and record videos and podcast episodes. Every morning, as a rule, I'm dedicating an hour to writing. There are time boxes, as I said, for recording podcast and others for recording YouTube shorts. I have time boxes on Thursdays and Fridays for editing these videos. The good news is, by using time boxing in the space of 1 week, I've built up a solid base of content, not just in the form of articles, but in the form of podcast episodes that are on standby, waiting to be edited, waiting to be published. To quickly recap these items, as a content creator that is trying to make better use of my time, I've set goals. I'm prioritizing writing. I'm using task management tools in the form of Google Spreadsheets and Google Keep to track my schedule, to lay out my content. I need to look into software like Notion. These changes have done a lot for me. If you enjoyed this episode and you're enjoying this podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a rating. I'll see you in the next episode.